Have you ever shared a problem in your life with someone? Maybe you lost your job, struggling to make bill payments. Maybe it's even trouble in a relationship. And then the response back is, who cares?
No! No!
After lunch, can I whip you?
Nope.
Oh, no fair.
Ow!
I wonder what makes it turn.
Who cares?
Imagine if the person who said, who cares, is the person in your life who's supposed to care, who you actually hired to care, who gets paid by your tax dollars to care. Well, that's exactly what Mark Carney did to every single Canadian who's suffering under unfair tariffs from the U.S. administration.
It's not an endorsement of everything that happens in the country, nor vice versa from those countries to us.
Next question.
Who cares? I mean, it's a detail. It's a detail. I spoke to him. I'll speak to him again when it matters. Who cares?
Who cares?
To put this in context, remember, the threats on tariffs was such an existential threat to Canada that Mark Carney called an early election.
I've just requested that the Governor General dissolve Parliament and call an election for April 28th.
He made a pitch. It wasn't just a promise to the Canadian people. It was the central promise of his entire campaign, that he was the man with a plan. He's the guy you hire in a crisis. He had some kind of secret knowledge that he would know how to handle Donald Trump and deliver a win.
I think in a situation like this, you need experience in terms of crisis management. You need negotiating skills, but you also need economic expertise.
He spends the entire election campaign demonizing his opponents, claiming that they would sell out on tariffs and they would somehow bow down and worship at the altar of Donald Trump.
And someone who worships Donald Trump will kneel down before him, not stand up to him. Negativity won't win a trade war.
And then he goes down to Washington, and just take a look at this body language. He's literally gushing over meeting his hero, Donald Trump. Mark Carney went from elbows up during the election to this in the Oval Office.
I want to be a great man too.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
And as a result, Canadians are losing their jobs. Thousands of job losses in the auto sector, the softwood lumber sector, the steel industry. All this investment leaving Canada, going to the United States after all of this happening, after Mark Carney became Prime Minister. He was the guy that was supposed to solve all this. These are his words.
If there's not a crisis, you wouldn't be seeing me. I am most useful. I'm honest. I'm most useful in crisis. I'm not that good in peacetime.
And after all that, months of this devastation hitting the Canadian economy, Mark Carney says, who cares?
Next question.
Who cares?
You know who cares? Those auto workers, those softwood lumber workers, those steel workers, the thousands of Canadians whose jobs depend on spin-off industries affected by those US tariffs. But there was one group in Canada that didn't care: the media.
The opposition Conservatives are going after the Prime Minister over comments he made at the G20 summit during the weekend. So tell us about how all this played out in question period, because I heard Pierre Poilievre, he repeated that who cares response in English. When he was answering in French, he said it in English. He said it many, many times.
Really? The focal point of this story is how the Conservatives reacted, not the actual thing that Mark Carney said to all those Canadians who have lost their jobs. This is a subtle but very effective tactic by the media. It's called Conservatives pounce. You see, when a Conservative makes a mistake or does something wrong, that's the focal point of the story. The media will hold it up to Canadians and say, this was something wrong. When a Liberal does something wrong, the media angle is Conservatives pounce, Conservatives slam. The entire focal point is on the Conservative reaction, not telling Canadians that what the Liberals did was objectively wrong. You might think that doesn't matter, but it is a subtle but effective way that the media protects Liberals from scrutiny and anger by keeping the spotlight slightly off-center onto something else, not really the bad thing that the Liberal did, but how the Conservatives are reacting. The viewers and the listeners and the reader's brain is slightly refocused not on the intrinsically awful thing that a Liberal just did, but how the Conservatives are reacting. Think about it. Mark Carney made this the essential plank of his election campaign, and the media happily went along with it. And then a few months later, he says, "Who cares?" And you might be hearing about this for the first time on this YouTube channel. That's because they did not give it the coverage that it deserved. You would think that this would be the lead story on every broadcast for days at a time, front page headlines across the country, but they didn't. And when they did cover it, they used the classic tactic that the Parliamentary Press Gallery always uses.
Next question.
Who cares?
What Mark Carney's actually saying is he has no idea. He doesn't know how he's going to get a deal. He has no plan to deal with Donald Trump. In fact, he's so bothered by the questions on it that he says, "Who cares?" Well, that's what you should say every time Liberals tell you that you have to vote Liberal to deal with something on the international stage, to deal with the tariffs, to deal with the US administration. You should just throw back at them, "Who cares?" Anytime you hear Mark Carney talking about trade with the US or tariffs on Canadian exports, you should just say, "Who cares?" Change the channel and tune him out, because that was his message to you. So you know what, Mark Carney, this part's especially for you. On behalf of the millions of Canadians you've let down and insulted, every time you open your mouth in Parliament, our message to you, who cares?